when you're willing to just simply learn,
Hmm.
you'll always see a new possibility, a new choice, a new
Hmm.
journey. There's always going to be something new for you to experience. But
Hmm.
if we spend all of our lives contributing or devoted to one thing, we may become great at it, but it's possible to get so great that you become blind because you stop looking for other knowledge or other understandings, or you forgot to explore the possibilities of what else is out there.
So, welcome to this week's episode of Leadership Soundbites with Michelle, my very special guest. First ever time he's been introduced this way. Drum roll.
Um,
Thank you. Dr. DeAngelo Richardson, legacy leader, founder, president of Different Reasons Incorporated.
yep.
Thank you for allowing me to introduce you that way the first time. I think that's pretty freaking cool.
Yes. I I'm not really like privy with introductions really. But when I hear them, it's like, man, they're actually talking about me. Like, like, did they just say that? Like,
Out
oh,
of body.
it's like that's me that they're talking about. I want to meet that guy. Who is he? So it's an interesting journey.
I
Thank
love
you. It's
it.
an interesting journey.
I love it. Thank you. So, you and I met through Sphere,
Yes.
and the community that Sphere pulled together, which was what an amazing group of humans to be able to come together with all these different backgrounds. And so Sphere is in the Netherlands, you're on the East Coast, I'm in California, along with a number of other leaders through just different parts of the globe, which
Yes.
is really freaking cool and challenging in of itself because of time zones that are interesting to have. Um, I was just, you're very thoughtful and also provocative in some of the things that you say, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
And I know when we had a live event, hot seat coaching, and so at the time, you haven't come on as a coach yet, but at the time you were one of the people commenting, and I appreciate the challenging comments or questions that you ask that you're like, okay then, so we're not going to ignore that one, but let's step into that and kind of explore it. And so I appreciate that about you.
Yeah, you're welcome. One of the things I find is that there's a lot of different. We all have different perspectives and understanding of the things that we're experiencing. So when questions are being asked, and this is something that I've learned through the experience of life, when questions are asked, they're being asked to challenge a difficult part of an understanding that needs to be, kind of understood for a different population of people. Because
Mhm.
everyone is going to understand the system or the process or whatever it is that we're being presented with. We're all going to understand it differently. So when the expectation or the standard of expectation is set, there should be a collective understanding there. And that's where we get an opportunity to see where we can grow and where we need to kind of just hold off a little bit longer because we're bringing a lot of people into that place of understanding. It's
Mhm.
one collective, global, unified front, which is one of the things we do at different reasons.
Yeah.
There's a system that we're all beginning to learn and hear more about and understand, and it's breaking down what we thought we knew as correct to something a little bit more understanding than what we knew before. Because it's never really about a right or wrong because we don't know everything. We have time. We have a time limit. All of us we pass away. We transition. So there's a time limit. We can't experience all that there is to experience with the amount of years that we're said to or projected to get.
Right.
We only get what we believe we will get or what we can get, and that's communicated
Mhm.
to us from God, and that lives and exists inside of us. So when we know that, we begin to believe that there's more, and then it
Mhm.
helps us to grow, and then we start realizing, man, I actually have something in common with that person I didn't think I had anything in common with 30 years ago.
Yeah.
It's a shifty experience.
Well, it's a shift, and it's a shift in it's one of those things that I'm gonna go back and I'll say it, and then you have a quote, and I want you to be able to step in with that quote. What came to mind for me when you said that is the essentially this the 17-year-old or 16-year-old, how basically he had stupid parents, right?
Mhm.
And then as he grew older, he was amazed at how far his parents had come.
Yeah,
And the reality of it is what exactly what you're talking about. 30 years ago or whatever it may be, you were at such a point in your life that you had limited experience to understand the magnitude of what you knew nothing about.
correct.
The longer we're on this earth, the more we realize the expansiveness of it, and this happens in leadership too. Okay. The expansiveness of it, the rest of the story, if you will, to where you go, wow, I had no idea that
Yeah.
that was going on, right? But this is what happens when we grow up, and it happens in leadership to where you're at the front line looking up at the top of the house leadership going, I could do such a better job than they're doing. What are they doing? So here's the thing, we don't know what we don't know.
We don't. We
And
don't.
as we elevate or advance or move up in our careers and get more experience and have seat at different tables, we start to realize, oh, I had no idea that that's also part of the equation and why they made the decision.
Yes. Yes. You know, I was talking to a good friend of mine, really, really good guy. We were actually we went and had breakfast.
But there
His
was
name's
food involved in this talk.
there
That's
was
always
food
a good
involved.
talk.
Yeah, we went to Everbowl. We went to
Okay.
Everbowl.
Okay.
Everbowl, really good place. Really good
Okay.
place to promote good health. So Brian and I were talking about this the concept of one of Alvin Toffler's quotes.
Okay. I'm
His
listening.
his quote was he said, "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn."
There you go.
So
What book is that from?
I don't know the book, but I know
Is
like
it The Power of Now?
I will have to go and check and reference. But
Okay. Well, yeah, because it's just weird connections. So I just had someone mention The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Uh,
mhm.
and so I'm like, this is a really odd coincidence.
Yeah,
So anyway, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt your story.
no, no,
You and
no,
Brian were talking over food, um,
yeah,
and the quote.
and that quote, the conversation we were having, it was we were discussing how the brain and people, like who we are as people, how we understand things in a more complex way. We actually had a pretty good idea. I'm not going to give away our idea, but
Okay.
we were going to develop a skit to kind of explain that to people that there's not we're not as different as we all think.
Yes.
It's just the experience that we're having in the moment is always a different experience. Perfect example. You and I right now are on a podcast together.
Yeah. The same.
And yes, we're having the same experience, but we're both experiencing it differently. And the
Exactly.
people that are watching now and the people that will be watching later, they're getting a completely different experience as well, but they're still connecting with this moment in time.
Exactly.
So so it's that's when we begin to embrace that understanding of
Mhm.
that, that's how things work in pretty much every situation. It'll help us to understand what's happening around us, and we can better discern not just what's happening around us, but who we truly are.
Yeah. Well, so this perspective thing. Humor me for a minute, and I may have
Okay.
done this before on the podcast. I know I've done it in a group of people. So you talk about perspective and how it matters. So are you ready? Are you ready to try something?
Yes.
Point your finger up to the ceiling and look up at your finger. Okay, look up at your finger and rotate your finger clockwise. Circle around clockwise, right? It's
Hmm.
clockwise, like in circles, right? You're going to move it around your finger. Now
Gotcha.
start dropping it down, right? To where it's dropping. Keep looking at it. Keep looking at it. It's dropping down to where, come on down to where it's in front of you. Bring your
Yeah.
finger down like this.
Okay.
Keep circling. Keep looking at it. Keep looking at it. Keep going down. Go below your chest level now. Keep looking at it. Is it still going in the same direction it was before?
Yeah, but it's just a different perspective. Different
Exactly. It's
it's a
a
different
different
angle of
direction
looking
now.
at it.
Right. So the
That
perspective
was
you're looking at.
Michelle. That was some work right there. Because you see how I had to go through the different
Yes.
layers of
Yes. Yes.
knowledge to find that I was
Yes.
not doing what you were instructing me to do. That
Exactly.
and that's a part of the journey. I think that's what
Yes.
we're all
Yes.
missing. It's like
Yes.
we're getting the instructions, but we're not hearing the instructions
They're not,
precisely.
well, they're not translating because we didn't have the same experience. So,
Right.
and we're not in the room, so where you're seeing me. So had I done this, but the thing is you didn't do anything different. Okay. As you come down here and now all of a sudden clockwise is now counterclockwise because
Yeah.
of your perspective.
Yeah.
It's,
That was
it's exactly what you're talking about.
that was good. That was good. That
You're
was good.
welcome. Feel free to use it. Feel free to use it. It's my gift to you.
Yeah, that was good. And somewhere when we look at the process of, because we use the body to illustrate the example.
Yeah.
When we look at the process of how that happened, imagine where people, you don't know where people, we don't know where people are following or where
No,
we lose them, but we can
no.
see something opposite in their behavior of what our expectation is from the instructions that we're given.
Yes.
So it's a learning experience for everyone, because even for someone to do the right thing, they have to be properly taught, but also taught from the right person. And
Mm-hmm.
all throughout that journey, the person still has to be able to properly communicate it to that person, because it's about where they are, not
Mm-hmm.
where the person with the knowledge is.
Yes.
So,
Well, and,
man,
and here's the thing is that, and there was something that it was a podcast I was listening to where they were talking about is you can have the teacher, and if the teacher, let's say, I think the example she used was tennis, right? So she's 5'1", and let's say the teacher teaching her tennis is 6'5". A
mm,
man holds the racket, does all this stuff. She's not going to be able to do exactly what he does and the way he instructs her because they're not the same.
right,
So
right.
there's got to be some adjustment to what's going on, to what you're talking about. And here's the interesting element that can step in, that typically steps in with leadership. I'm a leader. I'm instructing, or someone has a task that they do, and they're not successful in doing this task. And let's say they're a remote worker. So I'm frustrated because they're not doing the job that they were told to do. All right. And the example
Mm,
that you just gave, as a leader, I'm going to go, what's their, I'm going to write them up. I'm going to, what's happening? You're clearly not doing what I told you to do. Why? So as a leader, I want to get curious, and this is what I coach leaders to do. When you have performance issues or people are not meeting up to expectation, let's first assume that that's not their intent. All right?
yes.
That their intent is to do an amazing job. So if
Yes.
I step in now to that employee and I've got this assumption now that they mean to do an amazing job, I'm going to have a conversation with them. And the conversation is going to go something like this. So you and I both know what the expectation is. Help me understand what's getting in the way. You're muted. Oh, there
No, there's this there's this concept I'll use.
you go. Okay.
When people make decisions, and much like, because I'm agreeing with what you're saying, because we don't always know or understand what someone's intentions are.
Bingo. We don't ever know
We
unless they
never
say
know.
them to us.
We never know. But what's interesting is we also never get humble enough or empathetic enough to understand that someone may have seriously been taught how to do the wrong thing the right
Hmm.
way for a very long time.
Yes, exactly.
That's behavior that has to be corrected. It's not a forceful thing. It's we have to understand what communicated what to the mind.
Hmm.
You can't break someone out of that cycle by not putting them in a situation or a circumstance where the wrong of them can be undone
Hmm.
in a in a amount of time that's more realistic and optimal for them to understand what it's like to experience life doing it the right way.
Hmm.
Prisons are a perfect example. Like,
Hmm.
yes, we can say that a prison is a mental health institution gone wrong, because somewhere along the lines, people have agreed to decide to feel as though people who make mistakes are worthless to society, and that's
And can never change. Let's say
right,
that.
and that's not the truth,
Yes.
because they too are the individuals who work on some of the things that help us get through our day-to-day lives, like stop
Mm-hmm.
signs.
Mm-hmm.
Like the ideas, the innovative ideas come from those
Arms
individuals
and
as well.
license plates and all that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. So they have, if the circumstances for them show us that we actually could treat them better,
Mm-hmm.
because everyone loses when a wrong decision is made.
Mm-hmm.
No one wins from a bad decision.
Yep.
But if we're using bad decisions to capitalize, to justify, that's not the right thing to do, because it limits it limits what we're able to do collectively if we do it together. Now,
Mm-hmm.
somewhere along the lines, one way or another, we're still doing it. But if we're going to be doing, if we're going to be operating in a system like that, everyone has to be healing, not being placed in situations or circumstances where it's going to get worse.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't even work by the same system of pharmaceuticals, because they want you to get better, but they can't guarantee and promise that what they're giving you will fix all the problems. That's why we have laws and
Well,
regulations.
that's another interesting can of worms, right?
You know
Because
what I mean? You see? So
it just depends. There's an intent for something. If you go to pharmaceuticals, the only concern I have is the majority of the time they're treating the symptom and not the actual problem.
right.
So different animal, but same animal, DeAngelo, because when you were just saying that, so I'm going to bring back the quote that you and Brian were talking about from
Mhm.
Eckhart Tolle around the whole thing of the ability to unlearn, right? Learn, unlearn, and relearn so that you can unwind all that stuff you're talking about. We are the result of our upbringing, our environment, and they influence the choices we make and how we show up because it's all about choices. And so if we know no other way, and we're in an environment that doesn't even provide a glimmer of hope of anything, and we believe this is it, we act in a certain way. If we're in environments that things are great, show other options, but you've convinced yourself, the narrative and the language in your head, that you don't fit into that space, there's no role for you, place for you to succeed. Again, choices are made that are less than ideal. I think what you're talking about that exists on, I think, a number of different places because it can exist within leadership. It definitely exists within our prison system to where there's the illusion of rehabilitation, if you will. And that's an interesting freaking animal, by the way, that term, rehabilitation. Because I think what needs to happen is leadership development needs to happen in those situations to where people can think of, understand, embrace a different way of thinking and a different value and narrative and language that they have about themselves and their worth in society. So when that happens, right, then you have a human that's actually looking forward to contributing. They're learning and growing themselves, to your point. And then we're in a better position, because I'm not saying it's 100%, but we're in a better position to make better choices when the environment that we may step back into, that may still be the same, by the way, until we make different choices, we can withstand it and not just get sucked back into the vortex again of what's going on. But there's so many repeat people that come through that cycle back and forth, and it's like, what a waste. But then again, if they went back out because they weren't rehabilitated, air quote, they fall back into the same habits because they never unlearned the stuff that you're talking about to be able to make room to relearn something else.
Yeah. And that's I understand that. And that's the space where we have to recognize why. Like
Mm-hmm.
we don't ask enough why questions.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I say this is because we know what was supposed to happen, but something didn't happen. So why didn't this happen? It's the equivalent of saying, or my theory of saying, why is it that we put so much harsh punishment on a person who makes the mistake as opposed to the person who taught them how to do it?
Or the
because
system itself. Yeah.
right. So, we can't correct the individual when a system is designed to keep
Hmm.
them going in that direction of life to make those decisions. Perfect example. The law says that a woman younger than the age of 18 in America cannot legally give sexual consent.
Oh, yeah.
However, the music that's being communicated to that child up until that age is saying to them that it's okay for them to give
Yeah.
sexual consent. Now you have a trap of two different people or three different people suffering from misinformation, misguided information, or mistimed information.
Hmm.
Because sex is it shouldn't be a conversation that we're just afraid to have, but we seem to
Hmm.
be so sensitive about it because of the problems that it causes, and it only causes problems because we're not allowing ourselves or correcting the system that allows sex to be communicated. And yes, that is a parent's job, but a parent can only do so much when other kids are have they're given access to other environments, or they're hearing
Hmm.
things in public places that say things or communicate messages that aren't consistent with the messages that are communicated at
It's
home.
the society. So yeah, it's the
Society.
parents' legal moral responsibility to create the environment, have conversations with kids and everything else. And it depends on how equipped parents are to have those conversations, right? Because it's not, and it's the same thing with leaders. We promote people because they've got the technical expertise, so they're really good at the individual contributor role that they have. Um, Loving people get married, if you will, for the most part, and maybe it's switching to the most part, it's not it, but they get married and then they start to have families. What education or development is being provided to people so they can actually be ready, even if you're just a nanosecond ahead of ready, right? To have the child, raise the child, understand the different things that are happening with children, to where it's like telling a child when they get in trouble, go stand in the corner is probably the worst thing that you can do to ostracize them, from the rest of the family. But yet we do it because, to your point, we've been trained by our parents or their parents before them. And, this is what you do, those social norms too around our environment. So it's the same kind of thing. What does that look like to start having conversations around expectations or opportunities to develop even a nanosecond ahead of when that need of that development is being tapped? Does that make sense?
It does. I believe we have to focus on the we have to have a collective community of people who are interested in helping correct the system in a way that's not invasive, because we have to be able to maintain the system that we have
Yeah.
until we can properly fix the system so that
Yeah.
the people who are maintaining it don't suffer from it. So we have to hold each other throughout the process, and then we have to all have the same understanding that this is what we're doing. And once the understanding is given, we can start, kind of. That's where you build the system. Okay, who's going to do what? Who's going to do what? What do you all want to do?
You know
What
what
are you
came to
good
mind
at?
for me?
Go
But
ahead.
back in the day, I think, because here's what came to mind for me when you're talking about systems and building and all the people, and I'm thinking, it's the parent's responsibility. Who's responsible for raising the parent? The grandparents are there, right?
Mhm.
Well, what if the grandparents were misguided and they don't have the ability? Because you have leaderships that way too. It's like, well, your
Yes.
one up is the one responsible for developing you. What if they don't have the stuff needed to develop you? What if they weren't developed, right?
Yeah.
What's missing, and I'm not saying that we all come together in this way, but what came to mind for me is the hunter-gatherer, where you have the villages of people, right? All of a sudden, if you for some reason have a leg of the village that maybe the grandparents weren't so great, or and the parents of the people, having families of their own weren't so great. You've got the freaking village that someone there has got to know how to help people. And
Yeah.
I think what happens is, to your point, when you're talking about we have to be careful and communities together, we don't have that village anymore for the most part, the majority of people. So if for some reason your one up, i.e., your parents, don't have that skill set and don't have that to be able to develop you, it's not like, you can go over to the other tent or camp and go, hey, or they see what you're doing, they're going, there's a better way. Come on, let me help you with this, right?
And then a helping
That
hand.
doesn't exist any for the
Yeah.
most part in today.
It's because we're everyone is being told what they should be going after, what they should be chasing after, what should be their goals, and that's it takes away our ability to be humane with one another. And we can to answer. I want to address a few things that you mentioned because
Okay.
I understand what you're saying. We have needs because we aren't properly allocating the resources to build people, you know, help get people back to that place of where they need to be. For
Hmm.
instance, perfect example. Affirmative action. We have the affirmative action thing or the no child left behind. I remember those things, right?
Yeah.
But those the no child left behind was an inclusion thing, but did it work to everyone's good? Because if a child is not prepared to go to the next level, why should we send them to the next level? We should keep them where they are so that we can better prepare them.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter how long it takes someone to get there, is can we get them there the correct way without rushing them into the process to
Yeah.
satisfy.
Check the box, moving to the next level. That's
Yeah,
a factor. You've been here long enough. Well, it's
yeah.
like, no, we all different.
Yeah, and then we have to teach one another to properly communicate to people who are experiencing that it's okay because everyone's learning at the same time. And when we do things like that, we can find that helping hand society again. Because
Mm.
everyone will begin to understand that everything that we have to do in this life is not about us. It's not,
Mhm.
it's not it's for everyone else. Perfect example how we were talking about the setting up the systems with
Mhm.
people who want to do. When you look at different reasons incorporated, that's what the business model is. It's
Mhm.
a system, a organized system where all the right help goes to the right people.
Mhm.
Someone reached out to me for some assistance
Okay.
last week, and though they were asking me, I know reading the question that they were asking me, needing assistance with getting access to what it is that they were asking for.
Okay.
I couldn't provide that for them
Right.
because I don't specialize in what they're asking for, although I can give them some knowledge.
Right.
So I know who they supposed to go, who I should send them to,
Right.
and you know what I mean. That's a
Yeah.
helping hand. That's a
Yeah.
helping hand. I don't. I don't.
You're connected. You're
Yeah.
connected. And so you know what? I'm going to hand you off to Sally because Sally does what I don't do what you need, but I know Sally, and I'm
Yes.
going to be able to help you.
A trusted source as well.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
not just anyone. I'm not going to just refer you off to anyone. I'm going to make sure it's going to work to and for your good.
Yeah.
Like you want to grow. This is an opportunity for you to grow. Here, let me help you. Let me help you become a better version of yourself that you're obviously desiring because you
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have asked.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I can do that. I can do
I
that.
agree. I
You
agree.
know, we
I
need
love
more people doing things like that.
there's a lot more people doing stuff like that. I think, and that's what I've experienced. It's like, well, talking to you, it's like sphere pulling together. There is more of a sense of that happening and a movement around that happening in a number of different venues than what I've ever experienced before. So it's in different, I mean, literally a number of different venues, whether it's spiritual stuff, people coming together around, energy work or positive energy, intuition, whether it's leadership development, whether it's another community over here, it's happening on a number of different levels. Because I think people are realizing um, it has to change and it has to change now. And it's not us looking at government to change it. It's us. We have control over our world. And it's just, we have to take it back. So, what part do we play to step in and be able to help and support the people in our tribe, if you will, our community, whatever that may be? And these are people that we're connected to. How can I help you? It's like I was on a call this morning and talking to this individual, they would really benefit from connecting with this other individual. So I know both of them, so I connected them. It's the same kind of thing you're talking about. And we don't need massive structures in place because of all the technology that's out there. We can just do it with what we have and then watch it grow.
Correct. We don't need as much as we think we need. All we need is the intent of heart and the mind and just the first step,
Hmm.
even if it doesn't work out the first time, the first step, because that first step will show you within yourself that you were willing to contribute
Yeah.
internally, even if externally you were not able to.
Yep. No, I agree. I totally agree. I would love for you to share the quote that we're going to start with, but the other quote was cool only because I love it and I think it speaks to what you're talking about. It was from T.S. Eliot.
T.
It's okay. You have
My,
children in the background.
I'm
It's
like, did I
all
just?
good. It's all good.
I'm hoping they're all right because these last 2 days they kind of they kind of they've been being kids. So I'm like,
Yeah,
"Eh,
kids
are
do
you
that.
okay?"
Do that. You're like, okay,
um,
so who just died? Skin got peeled off bodies.
yeah.
I love
So
it.
the T.S. Eliot, only those who will risk going too far can know how far one can go.
Yeah.
That's one of the best quotes I ever heard, and I lived by it. I went skydiving, ten
Oh,
thousand foot drop, and
not doing that, but
it
okay, go ahead.
it changed me. It changed me, and my daughter said she wanted to do it too. So I said, okay, we're going together when you
Yeah.
do. I'm not letting you go out. No, we're not.
Yeah.
We're going together. And I told her, you're not going to be the same afterwards. You're going to know that more of you is possible. There's
Yeah.
further for you to go. I'm actually going to do another jump. I'm going to do a halo. I'm going to do a halo jump.
Oh, is that the one with a bunch of people where you hold hands?
High altitude, low oxygen.
Oh, that one. Oh.
Thirty
Well, I
thousand
will
foot
tell
drop.
you what. So my hashtag line for like a number of years has been face your fears and do it anyway. Okay. So it fits along there. Um, the thing that I feared, and it was this rope rappelling inside this large cavern, right? That the height of this cavern was the height of the Empire State Building.
Mm.
Yeah, Empire State Building. I think that's what it was. Maybe it was Statue of Liberty. Anyway, it was freaking tall. All right. So there was a group of people that I was with, and so I kept when it was my turn, I went, "Oh no, you go ahead. Oh no, you go ahead." I was literally the last one to repel because what happened is you're on the rock thing, and then you drop down into the middle of this thing. So there's nothing around you. It's just you and the rope going down.
Mm.
And I knew the description of it, and so I was literally the last one, and I could have left and not done it
Mm.
or done it, but it took that whole time for me to build up the courage to do it. And it's powerful when you push through that kind of stuff that you're like, this is this is scary because
Yeah.
I mean, I'm depending on me for all this stuff. Because there's not a buddy repelling with you. It's like, okay, here's what you do with the rope. Here's, da 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 da. Um, Skydiving, no, I'm not. I don't even have a desire. But the repelling off that, I mean, it was like it was a thing. It was a thing. So I hear you.
Fast roping. I did fast roping down helicopters as well.
Oh, geez, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
I've done
I
those.
did not. I don't want to mislead you. There was no fast about this. Okay, this
Yeah.
was as controlled as you could possibly get,
Yeah.
slowly descending down this rope. It was not fast.
That's a different experience. That's a different, because it's at a different pace. I'd imagine it raises a different level of anxiety.
Well, I needed this false illusion of control in this
Yeah.
thing. So if I had just quickly descended, I would have lost my whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was my choice on the descent. But I appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that we do have to push ourselves.
Yes, we do.
And what
We do.
happens is when you come out the other side, you're like, what's next?
Yeah.
What else am I saying I can't do or that's holding me back? So yeah, I agree.
It's another thing Brian mentioned today at breakfast.
Yeah.
We were talking about that just that concept of overcoming the fear that we place in our minds to limit us from doing what we're capable of doing, and that
Mhm.
doesn't just apply to actions. That also applies to different levels of understanding.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be willing to learn more. I'm a big Bible person, so the Bible says it says wisdom is the principal thing, and all thy getting get understanding. And the more just kind of meditate on that word, it makes me someone who's more willing to understand what other people are experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of those places of life where you can exist outside the barriers of yourself, because you start having more conversations with people, and you
Mm-hmm.
find out that you have a whole lot more in common with strangers than you
Mm-hmm.
thought, because you didn't know them. You don't know what anyone knows.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know what they know about you. You don't
Mm-hmm.
know They don't know what you know about them, but you're talking in that moment. You're
Yeah.
interacting
Well, and I
and
think there's an important. I totally agree with you. Obviously, I'm bobbleheading,
mhm.
and I think there's an important aspect to stuff too. Is when you connect with people and you feel a connection, and you're like in your head. It's like that's a really cool human, or I want to get to know them. Say it.
Yeah,
Say it. Don't
yeah,
just leave that crap in your head.
yeah,
Because odds are they're feeling something too. But it's like just bring that into existence and let people know, hey, I don't want to lose contact with you.
yeah,
And they're like, and it doesn't mean that you're attracted or anything. There's some connection that there's something happening. Acknowledge it, say it out loud. Because I've got people that I've met that instantaneously, I'm like, you got something to say, I want to hear it.
yep. It's the beginning of a growth experience,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't have a label, because it's something that you just kind of intuitively know within yourself
Mm-hmm.
before it materializes. So
Yeah.
those are some of the best experiences in life. You meet people, and you and I, for example, I
Yeah.
would have never known that. I would have never guessed that we'd be doing this, having a
Yeah.
podcast. I would have never guessed it. It was just like, yo, Michelle, she's cool. Like, she you could tell you're like, I knew that you were inquisitive, and I'm someone who's inquisitive. So it's like,
Yeah.
what more can we know and understand about a situation before we come to a conclusion? Because the conclusion is still going to lead us to wanting to
More
know more.
questions. More
Right.
questions.
So it's
You're
a
like, okay, are
process.
we assuming that or is that something else? Yeah. Um, I've
Right.
got I've got a podcast link I'll send you that Dr. Ellen Langer was on that you might find interesting. So I'll do that when we're
Okay.
done with this. And I'll put the link in for whoever's listening here in the description as well if you want to. It's
Okay.
3 hours and there's a lot of really interesting stuff on perspective and just the brain and the whole mindfulness. I think I shared that quote with you before that um, I mean, I'm quoting her now. It's not really a quote,
Mhm.
uh, but it was, what was it? When you know you don't know, then you pay attention. When you pay attention, you have choices that otherwise you were blind to.
Yeah.
And it speaks to this whole thing that we're talking about and resonating around is like, don't go through life assuming that you know the stuff. Go through life curious about what the stuff is.
Yeah.
And then you're going to start seeing things that you didn't see before. You'll open for opportunities that you didn't know. Because, I mean, like I said, the older I get, the more I go, my God, what I know you could fit in a thimble. What I don't know is the rest of the space on the earth. So, and I know a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I mentioned yesterday is probably my favorite thing recently is, as a leader, I I enjoy being able to listen to what younger people have to say, because they know things too. But the things that I learn from them, it's like, wow, this is valuable. And I know that I'm someone who can connect with people of all ages,
Mm-hmm.
and being being in a seat of a student to understand the knowledge that they have, that's a process of connecting people. And that's
Mm-hmm.
most importantly what I'm trying to say is, when you're willing to just simply learn,
Mm-hmm.
you'll always see a new possibility, a new choice, a
Mm-hmm.
new journey. There's always going to be something new for you to experience. But
Mm-hmm.
if we spend all of our lives contributing or devoted to one thing, we may become great at it, but it's possible to get so great that you become blind, because you stop looking for other knowledge or other understandings, or
Mhm.
you forgot to explore the possibilities of what else is out there.
So is that like a mic drop moment, D'Angelo? It feels like a mic drop moment.
It is a mic drop moment.
I agree with you. So I'm
It's
not
a
going to
mic
ask
drop
you.
moment.
Yeah, I'm not going to ask you what one or two things you want people to walk, because I think that's the freaking thing.
Yeah.
And so I'll end it there and thank you to just your time, the conversation, an open invitation to come back any freaking time you want, sir. I would love to continue to chat. So I will say now, this has been Leadership Soundbites with Michelle and D'Angelo, Dr. D'Angelo Richardson. And until next time, please like, share, subscribe, and have a freaking awesome day.